Hello, I'm Sarah. Welcome to your yoga lesson. So today we're going to be practicing for 40 minutes. We're going to start off with some basic breathing exercises, and then we are going to move on to some posture practice, and we'll finish with a short relaxation. So as with any kind of physical activity, it's really important that you respect and listen to your own body. I can't see you, and also I don't know what you're feeling even if we were in the same room unless you told me. So it's very important that you pay attention to yourself. So even simple movements can cause you to do yourself some harm if it's not right for you. So that also means that by listening to yourself, we are respecting those principles of yoga, of the use of the breath and posture to help to calm the mind. Now, it may be that you're not here for that reason. Maybe you want to have a good stretch, or maybe you want to improve your balance. And yoga can certainly help improve flexibility and strength and balance. But with prolonged practice of yoga, it certainly can help us to deal with stress and anxiety in a better way. And who doesn't want that? So, whatever the reason for you being here, let's start our yoga practice today. So I'm going to move to being seated on the mat, but you don't have to sit on the mat. You could sit on a chair or the sofa. If you are sitting on chair or sofa, try to make sure that your thighs are parallel to the ground. So if you've got short legs like me, you probably need a book or two to put underneath your feet to lift your feet up off the ground. And I've got a thick book behind me that could be used for those purposes, kind of instead of a yoga block. I've also got a cushion on my mat, which just helps me to lift my bottom up off the mat, gets my pelvis in a nice position for being seated for a little while. And then I've also got a blanket that I can put under my knees for when we're kneeling, and a yoga strap as well. But you don't need a yoga strap. You could use a dressing gown belt or just a regular belt. You can manage without any of these props, but you probably have some of these things around your home, so you might want to pause the video and go and get those things, and so you can make use of them, because the more comfortable you are during your yoga practice, the more you can get out of it. Okay, so I'm going to go and sit on my mat. Okay, so you might want to sit cross-legged, or you might want to sit in a kneeling position. If you're sitting cross-legged, as I said, the cushion is just helping to lift my bottom off the mat and just to get my pelvis tilting forwards a little, and just to take some strain off my lower back. If you want to kneel, then you could place your cushion between your legs, and that can just help to lift your bottom off your heels and take the pressure off your feet, being in this flat position down on your mat, which a lot of people find uncomfortable. You could also sit with your legs straight out in front of you, either with a bend in them or flat down onto the mat. But if you have got your legs out in front of you like this, and you're up on a cushion, just put something underneath your knees to get them to bend this way. Knees like bending this way, but don't like bending the other way. Okay, so we're going to be here for a few moments. So just take a moment to find yourself a comfortable seated position. I know that for a lot of people, when we first start practicing yoga, this bit can be really quite challenging. It can be quite difficult to find yourself a comfortable seated position, and I do encourage you to move if you become uncomfortable. There's nothing wrong with doing that. There's no awards for sitting there and suffering, and if a part of your body is causing you a lot of discomfort, then either you're going to end up harming yourself, injuring yourself, or you just can't concentrate. A little bit of discomfort in the hips and in the back is usual when you're not used to sitting like this. But it's certainly, if you find you've got discomfort in the knees, we have to look after the knees really well, then I would definitely suggest you move. Okay. So, sitting nice and tall, I'm just going to roll the shoulders and slide them down the back. So when I say tall, I mean that it's like we've got a thread at the top of the head helping us to sit upwards, but we're not really stiff. We're not really stiff and tight around the body. We can move around a little bit. We can just move from side to side and wiggle around on the sit bones. And if you do find that you're starting to become quite uncomfortable, sometimes it's just these little shifts in where you're sitting, coming forwards as well, can just help to just relieve the muscles, relieve the joints before you settle back down again. So, okay, hands can be resting on the knees or in the lap. And you take your focus to your breath and start to take some slow, deep breaths in and out. So, in yoga, we normally breathe in and out through the nose. If you can't do that, that doesn't matter. And what we're looking for here is a natural, relaxed breath. So we're not hurrying, we're not rushing. We're looking for a breath that has steadiness and ease. The Sanskrit words for those principles are sthira and sukha. So steadiness, a breath that's even. A breath that we're not really trying very hard. We're just allowing the natural flow of our in-breath rolling to our out-breath. Out-breath to in-breath, one breath to the next. And a breath with sukha, a breath with ease, that's a breath that we're not forcing. We're not really trying to do anything at the moment. Just settle down onto our yoga mat for the start of our practice. Now at this point it is quite usual for your mind to start to chatter away to you. And those thoughts may be innocuous or there may be something that's bothering you, but whatever they are, the important thing is that you notice that you've become distracted away from where you are and what you're doing, and that you refocus and take your attention back to your breath. So some of you, I would imagine, have already started to count your breath. And it's at this point, after being down on the mat for a few moments, that we could start to think about equalising the in-breath and the out-breath. But remembering that we're still not forcing, we're not hurrying. And it may take a few rounds of breath for us to make the in-breath and the out-breath of equal length. And if you find that at the end of your in-breath, you're desperate to breathe out, or at the end of your out-breath, you're desperate to breathe in, and you just need to give yourself a break, reduce the length of the breath a little. And ignore the ego telling you that you should be doing things quicker or longer, harder. This is about being kind to yourself. And remember what I said, if you do need to move, that's absolutely fine. We're going to introduce a little bit of movement now anyway. So if you wanted to move posture, this would be a good point to do that. And then you're going to place your left hand onto your right leg and you're going to turn and look over your right shoulder. And you're making this all about the muscles making the movement. So you're not forcing with your hand, you're just wringing your spine out, introducing a little bit of a twist. And you keep breathing and you notice that in this position the breath feels a little restrained because of the position of your body. And then you come back through the centre and you move in the other direction. And then you come back and roll the shoulders out. Now they may be little rolls, just with your shoulders coming up to your ears, and then feel them moving, your shoulder blades moving together. And you might get some crunches and some creaking in them. I know that I certainly am. But as long as that's not painful, then that's okay. It's just movement around in the joints. Or maybe you want to make those rolls bigger and you could start to bring your elbows out to the side. Okay. Shoulders are one of those areas that we tend to carry an awful lot of tension, so you'll hear me referring to just trying to let the shoulders go, releasing them and relaxing them away from the ears. Okay, so we're going to move into a side bend now, so reaching up with your left hand. You're going to come over to the side and you're going to keep your left sit bone firmly planted down onto the mat. So we're looking for you feeling length through the side of the body. I'm not really leaning very heavily onto my hand on the mat. And then we come back to the centre and lower that hand and reach up with the other and come over in the other direction. So once again, keeping the sit bone firmly planted down on the mat. It's all about finding that length all the way through the side of the body rather than how far over you can go. And then back to the midline, lower that hand and roll those shoulders. Maybe just the small rolls again, maybe the big rolls. And focus on what you're doing, focus on what you're feeling. And then we're going to repeat that again, but with a little bit more attention to the shoulders. So left hand raised, coming over to the side, keeping the sit bone firmly planted down on the mat. Now when we lift up the arm like this, there is a tendency for the shoulder to shrug up towards the ear. So just try and allow the shoulder to release. And that shouldn't really mean that you lose a great deal out of your side bend. In a moment of stillness like this, we try to move our focus back to our breath. And then we come back to the centre, lower that hand, and we raise the other one, and we come back over in the other direction. And once again, try to release the shoulder blade. So arm is raised, sit bones firmly down on the mat, shoulder blade sliding down the back. And back to the centre, lower the hand, roll the shoulders. Big ones or little ones, whatever you want to do, whatever feels right for you. And then we're going to come down to lying on the mat. Okay, so you might want to put a blanket underneath you if you find it uncomfortable to lie down on the mat, if you're on a hard floor like me. If you aren't using a yoga mat and you're using a blanket or a rug or something like that, just to remind you so I don't forget later, when we come up to standing, just make sure you step off so there's no off the blanket or the rug. If there's a risk that it's slippy on the floor, I don't want you falling over. Okay, so coming down onto your back, and if you have your yoga strap, you're going to place it around one of your feet, doesn't matter which one, around the widest part of the foot, pabilo big toe, pabilo little toe. Allow the toes to come down towards the face. Now, you may have a big bend in your knee in order to be able to move your leg up into this position. It just depends on how tight your hamstrings are. Okay. So, and once you've found that comfortable position with your lifted leg, you might want to slide your lower leg along the mat. Now, the leg may not get all the way down to the mat. You may just end up with your foot still on there with a slight bend in the knee, or you may slide your leg all the way down. Now if you do that, do try to get that lower leg down onto the mat. And what you will find is that probably causes your lifted leg to move away from you a little. I'm just adjusting my position and bending my knee a little bit more, and what we're looking for is length through the back of the leg into the hamstrings. And we take our focus back to the breath again. And we don't forget the shoulders. We check in on them, make sure they're nice and relaxed. You do not need to be pulling on this strap for dear life. If your leg is shaking, you've gone a little bit too far, back off a little. Don't listen to the ego. And then release the foot out of the strap. Draw your knee towards your chest, your thigh to your belly. Now either wrap your hand around the back of your thigh or your shin, see what feels comfortable for you. And then the leg that's on the mat, just push through the heel so you can just feel some opening through the front of the hip. And then we're going to swap over. So place the other foot in the strap. So you've got one foot on the ground, one leg in the air. Find that position with your lifted leg again. Allow the toes to come down towards your face a little so you can feel the length through the back of the ankle and the calf. Bend in the knee and the lifted leg. And the foot that's on the mat, you could slide it away from you to wherever feels right for you. Remembering if you're taking it all the way down to the mat, we're looking for a leg that is down on the mat, not sort of hanging around in space. And we can then adjust the lifted leg position again. If you don't get the lower leg down onto the mat, you're not getting anything out of the opening of the front of the hip there. And focus back to the breath with relaxed shoulders. Okay, and then you're going to bring thigh to belly, knee to chest, hands either around the back of the thigh or the shin, and just push through the heel that's down on the mat. And then bring both knees up to join each other. Wrap the hands either around the backs of the thighs or the shins into Paragasana. You're keeping your tailbone down on the mat so the spine is nice and long. So if your thighs don't get all the way to your belly, it doesn't matter. With practice over time, that can change. And then place your hands on top of your knees and just draw some circles through your hip joints. So you're moving your upper leg bone around in the socket. Once again, you might hear some cracking and some creaking, but as long as it doesn't hurt, you need to listen out for those signs. Pain is your body's way of warning you that you're doing something that you probably shouldn't be. Okay, and then you're going to change direction. And we're going to come into reclined butterfly. So place your feet on the mat and then allow your knees to come out to the side and the soles of your feet to come together. So you're opening out through the centre of the hips. You can rest your hands on your belly or on the ground at the side of you. Just checking on your glutes. Have you clenched them unnecessarily? If you're not sure whether you have or not, just clench your glutes and release them. And once again, shoulders away from the ears. We're looking for a moment of release of tension in between our postures. And once again, in this moment of stillness, we take our focus back to our breath, and maybe that's your count. Or maybe it's just noticing the sensations of the breath that causes the rise and fall of the chest and the belly. So bring your knees back together, and then we're going to move into practicing bridge. So you're going to bring your feet apart. Now traditionally it was always said that the feet should be level with the hips, but I like my feet a little bit wider apart than that. I'm trying to find a position where my legs feel really well balanced down through the bones, rather than using lots of muscular effort to maintain the position of my legs. So if your feet are too close together, your knees will tend to drift to the outer edge of your mat. If your feet are too far apart, your knees will tend to drift inwards. So just spend a moment finding that place for your knees that's right, your feet that's right for you. Your hands can be resting on your belly or down onto the mat. And then we're looking for you to focus on your feet. And all I'd like you to do is start to think about pushing your feet into the mat. And when you push your feet into the mat, allow that action to transfer through your legs. Your knees will feel as if they are pushing away from you in a line towards your big toes. And your spine will slowly start to lift up off the mat. Okay. So we're doing this nice and steadily and with focus. And we're trying to keep the tension out of the front of the hips and also the glutes. It's all about the feet just pushing and rolling the spine up one vertebrae at a time. So in bridge, when you have your bottom lifted up like this, it's not a good idea to turn your head to the right or the left. So if you do need to watch what I'm doing, then it's a good idea for you to just sit and watch the video, and then you can always rewind it and practice along again after you've kind of got the hang of what I'm talking about if it's not making sense. So if you've not already released the pressure from your feet and lowered your bottom down to the mat, then please do so. And just try to do that with the same degree of attention that you did when you came up. And then once your bottom's down on the mat, take your feet off the mat, wrap your hands around your shins or the backs of your thighs, back into your Paragasana. And you could take a little rock from side to side across your lower back if you want to. And then feet on the mat again. And we're just going to repeat that once more. So finding that place that your feet are positioned that's right for you, right for your anatomy. And then slowly, fully focusing on the feet. Pushing the feet into the mat. Knees, as if they're drawing an invisible line towards your toes. They're obviously not going to get there. Just the line that they're following. And we slowly push through the feet. We keep the tension out of the shoulders. Have your shoulders start to shrug up towards your ears. And find the bridge that's right for you. Maybe you want to come a little bit higher this time, and you'll find that your glutes probably kick in. And you feel some opening through the front of your hips. But listen to your body. Keep the tension out of your shoulders. Keep the breath nice and steady. Lift your toes. Are you gripping the mat with your toes? You don't need to be. And then when you're ready, slowly releasing the pressure through the feet. Allowing the knees back along that invisible line, back to their starting position. Gently lowering the spine. And then once you're all the way down, bringing your knees back into your chest, thighs towards your belly. And once again, you can have a gentle little rock from side to side again. Okay, so we're going to come up to seated. So I would suggest you come over onto your side. And then we're going to move into practicing a posture called Paragasana. So Paragasana is a side bend. We're going to start off in the kneeling position. So I'm placing my blanket underneath my knees just because I like the cushioning. So we come up to a high kneel, and then we're going to extend the left leg out to the side. So I'm just going to adjust my position a little bit so I'm a bit more on my mat. So left leg comes out to the side. Now we're looking for the left heel to be roughly in line with the right knee, and we keep the right hip forwards. And already you probably will feel a little bit of opening through the front of that right hip. If you need a bend in this extended leg, that's fine. Ideally we have the whole foot down on the floor, but don't get too caught up in that if that's not feeling right for you. Okay, and then what we're going to do is keeping that right hip forwards over the knee. We're going to raise up the right hand and then allow the other hand to creep down the side of the leg as we come into a side bend Paragasana. Now making sure you keep that right hip forwards is just going to help you to get a sense of opening through the front of that right hip and also through the right side of the body. Keep the shoulder relaxed and sliding away from the ear. If you're tight through the inside of the leg, you may feel this through the inside of the leg here, but you can keep a gentle bend in the knee just to release that a little bit. Focus is back to the breath again. And then come back to the centre, lower the arm, bring the knees back together again, and then we're going to practice that on the other side. So you're going to extend the right leg this time with the toes pointing forwards. Hip is forwards and over the knee. Heel is roughly in line with the knee. And then you're going to raise up the left hand and come over on the other side. Notice if it feels different on this side. Keep the shoulders sliding down the back. Keep the hip forwards. Focus back to the breath. And then come back to the centre. Lower the hand. Bring the knees back together. And then we're going to come round and into child's pose. So this is really about finding a relaxed child's pose. So you may want your knees together or apart. Quite often child's pose is done with the arms extended in front and reaching away from you, but I'm looking for you to practice a nice relaxed position. So the shoulder blades are sliding away from each other and the elbows are resting down onto the mat. And we take our focus back to our breath again. Notice the effect of your breath in this position. Feeling your belly moving against your legs and the expansion of your ribs in your back. Okay. Right. So now going to make our way up to standing. So you've been down on the mat for a while, don't pop up too quickly, it can make you feel dizzy. Makes me feel dizzy if I stand up too quickly, particularly if you've got any blood pressure problems. So what you might want to do is sort of come into a little crouch on the mat, and then you can keep your hands down onto the mat and slowly start to straighten your legs. You may still have a really big bend in the knees, and if you do, that doesn't matter. Keep the head nice and heavy, the arms heavy, and then push through the feet and come up to a standing position. Okay. So just going to practice a few forward fold and rolls just to get a little bit more mobility into the spine. So we find our mountain posture first of all. So feet are roughly hip width apart, firmly planted down on the mat, paying attention to the pad below big toe, pad below little toe in the heel. A gentle bend in the knees. We notice the natural curves in the back curve and the lower spine, just above the bottom, curving up towards where the ribs are, and the gentle curve out, and then the curve back in behind the neck. We just focus on those, we just visualise them. We keep the shoulders relaxed and away from the ears. And we pay attention to this posture. It's a bit like when we start with our seated postures at the beginning of the class. This brings us onto our mat, gives us a sense of what we call grounding. Can really help if we're feeling stressed or anxious and like our mind is flitting all over the place. Just standing and focusing on our contact with the ground, checking you're not gripping the mat with your toes, lifting them up. And then on your next in-breath, you're going to sweep your arms nice and wide, reach up to the ceiling, and if you want to, you could take your gaze up to your fingertips. And then slowly and with control, you're going to bring your arms down in front of you and come all the way down to the mat into a forward fold. Now, this is where you really have to take your time because you can make yourself feel dizzy going from high to low if you do it too quickly. At this point in your forward fold, your Uttanasana, you'll probably be feeling the length through the back of your legs into your hamstrings. I certainly am. Keep a bend in the knees. It's not good to have the knees super straight. And then when you're ready, you push your feet into the mat. Your arms and your head and your shoulders stay heavy and you slowly roll back up to standing and you roll your shoulders out at the top. Okay, and then we're going to repeat that again. So breathing in, sweeping the arms wide, take the gaze up to the fingers if that feels right for you. And then breathing out, bringing the arms in front of you all the way down. into your forward fold. So if your ego is telling you your legs should be straight, just ignore it. Doesn't matter. This is about what you're feeling. Arms are heavy, head is heavy. Feel how firmly planted down onto the mat you are through your feet. And then push through your feet, arms, shoulders, head, all heavy. So we uncurl the spine and we come back up to standing. And you might want to do some of those shoulder rolls, either little shoulder rolls or big shoulder rolls. Okay, so we're going to do that for a third time. Here we go, breathing in, reaching up, gaze to the fingers. This time you could reach slightly behind you if you want to, just to open out through the chest a little bit. If your arms aren't as straight as mine are, or you feel a restriction in your shoulders, that may be your anatomy. So just carry on listening to your body, folding forwards nice and slowly and with control, coming all the way down to the mat. Arms are heavy, head is heavy. Feeling that length through the back of the legs. And then pushing the feet into the mat and slowly uncurling. If you keep your head and your neck and your shoulders nice and heavy, you'll get more out of that opening through the spine. And roll your shoulders again at the top. Okay, so we're going to introduce an extra posture now called chair posture, Utkatasana. Now it can be quite an intense posture. So this is once again where you really need to be listening to yourself and what's right for you. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start to bend our knees and allow them to move towards our toes. Our bottom will move back as if we were trying to sit into an invisible chair, an imaginary chair. Okay, so you should just be able to see your toes beyond the edge of your knees. Check you've not started to stick your bottom out too much because that will put strain on your lower back. So just tuck your tailbone under a little just so you take that strain off your lower back. And then I would suggest you bring your hands into prayer position in your heart space and just let your shoulders slide down your back. And probably like me, your thighs are starting to feel it. You can always come out of this whenever feels right for you. Just check down that you can still see your toes beyond your knees. Gaze is just ahead of you. And then push through the feet and come back up to standing. Release the hands and roll the shoulders. Okay, so what we're going to do is now introduce chair into our little routine with our forward fold and our roll up. Okay, so when we're ready, move into your chair, knees bending towards your toes. You'll be able to see your toes just beyond your knees. Check you're not sticking your bottom out too much. Shoulders are relaxed and away from the ears. Gaze is ahead of you. Focus back to your breath. If you find your thighs are starting to shake, you can always push through your feet and come up a little bit higher. The lower you go, the more challenging it will be. And then breathe out, slowly straighten the legs a little and come into your forward fold. And then just hang out in your forward fold for a moment before you push through your feet and slowly unfurl, rolling back up to standing and just roll out the shoulders. I always feel like that forward fold feels so good after being in chair for a few moments when my thighs are starting to tell me that they've had enough. Okay. Hands into my heart space, back into chair again, Utkatasana. Toes visible just beyond the end of my knees. Focus back to my breath, gaze in the distance just ahead of me, shoulders relaxed and away from the ears. And then push into the feet, straighten the legs slowly and with control. Come back into your forward fold. Arms are heavy. Head is heavy. Enjoy the feeling of length through the back of the legs. Remember that bend in your knee. It might be right for you. You don't need your legs super straight, and it doesn't matter where your hands come to. It might be your shins, your ankles, your feet. With time, this can definitely change. So
Don't get frustrated with yourself today if you're not where you think you should be. And then push the feet into the mat and roll back up to standing and roll the shoulders. Okay, so we're going to do that once more. Okay, when you're ready, chair posture. Check you're not sticking your bum out, putting strain on your lower back, shoulders away from your ears. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit more, maybe you want to lower your bottom a little bit more. But if you do that, just try and keep the weight evenly balanced across the front and back of the feet so you don't drop all your weight into your heels. Focus back to the breath. And then breathe out, come into your forward fold. Hanging heavy there for a moment. And pushing the feet into the mat. And slowly coming back up to standing and rolling your shoulders. Good. Okay, so we're going to practice Warrior One now. So Warrior One is good for opening through the front of the hips, and also it's challenging for balance as well. The wider you take your stance, the more challenging this will be. So I'd suggest if you haven't done this before, you keep your stance narrower. That's only what I'm going to be doing. And just be careful that as you're challenging your balance, there's nothing around that you might fall over onto and hurt yourself. Okay. You could always, I've got my table in front of me here. You could always put your hand on the table just to help you with your balance if you needed to, if you've got anything like that around you. Okay. So I'm going to turn to facing, actually, I think that'll be better. Right, so find your Tadasana, your mountain pose again. And then you're going to step back with your left foot. So step back to a comfortable position for you, just as far back as feels right for you. Now, even that process of stepping back like that is good for challenging our balance. And your back foot, just have a little look at it. Where has it landed? What I'm looking for is a sort of 45-degree angle on the back foot. So your toes, if you're on a mat, will be sort of cutting off the corner of the mat, but my toes are sort of pointing out to a 45-degree angle. My front knee is automatically already in a bend, and we're looking for a bend that the knee is certainly no further forwards than the ankle, and also we're looking for a knee that is in line with the toes. If you're tight at the front of your hips, the knee will tend to swing in, and that's not good for knees at all, so just do really pay attention to that. Okay, so I'm feeling some opening through the front of my hip here already. If you're not, because you're really flexible, you might want to take your foot a little bit further back. And then if it feels right for you, you could always raise your arms above your head. Keep your shoulders sliding down your back, and you are in Warrior One. Paragasana 1. You take your focus to your breath. And then if you've got your arms raised, you can bring them back down to your sides. You can roll your shoulders. And then place your hands on your hips, lean forwards and step back to the front of the mat. Okay, and we're going to do that on the other side. So weight into your left foot and step back with your right foot. Bend in the knee. Check that knee's not swinging in. Back foot at a 45-degree angle. You are looking to try and have the whole of the back foot down on the ground as well, so you might just need to play with your stance at this point. Remember, the more together your feet are, i.e. either this direction or this direction, the closer they are, the more challenging that will be for your balance. So you can always take your feet a little bit further apart. So just play around with that for whatever is right for you. So if you want to as well, again, you could raise your arms. If it doesn't feel right with raising your arms, you could try just bringing your hands into prayer position in your heart space. And take your focus back to your breath again. And place your hands on your hips now. bend at the waist, at the hips, and step back to the front there. And you can just give your shoulders a little bit of a roll. Good, well done. That was warrior one. Okay, so I'm going to finish off the main postures with a balance now. I'm going to practice tree. Okay, so if you have anything around you that can help you with your balance, then please feel free to use that. You could always have your hand on the table or the back of a chair or a cabinet or a wall. If you've done this before, you might want to try challenging yourself by taking your leg a little bit further up, but using the support. Just play around with it to see what's right for you. So on our starting position, we're going to step onto our left foot and we're going to bring the sole of the right foot to rest on the inside of the left leg. Okay, keep a gentle bend in the standing leg. Now this may be enough for you today. Remember to use the wall or something to support you if you need to. Think about moving the knee out to the side. So this is working on some opening through the front of the hip. If you're feeling you've got a little bit more room in this to challenge yourself a bit further, you can slide your foot up the inside of your leg and you can rest it against the inside of your calf. Keep your shoulders down, relaxed and away from your ears. You can bring your hands into prayer position. Now, if you want to take your foot further up the inside of your leg, you can do, but don't press it against the inside of your knee. That's not good for knees. And then you can release your hands, allow your knee to come back to the front and place that foot down on the mat. Okay. So let's practice that on the other side. So stepping onto your right foot and allowing your knee to come out to the side with the sole of the foot resting against the inside of your leg. You can bring your hands into prayer position and focus back to the breath. And then allow the knee to come back to the front. Release the foot. Just give the legs a little bit of a kick out. And then we're going to come down onto the mat. And we're going to move into just a little bit of counter pose movement with the breath to finish the lesson off just for a few moments. Okay. So find your way onto your back again. You might want to put your rug underneath you. And you can bring your arms out into a T position or a cactus. And then as you breathe out, you can allow your knees to drift over to the right. Don't worry too much if your left shoulder blade lifts up a little. And then breathing in, bringing the knees back through the centre and over to the left. Really keeping the focus on the breath. Breathing in, coming back through the centre, breathing out and allowing the knees to drift to the right again. Keeping your focus on your breath and the movements. And then through the centre on the in-breath, breathing out and moving in the other direction. So we're moving in and out of a gentle twist through the spine. So on your next in-breath, come back through the centre again and then allow your knees to drift over in the other direction. And just allow them to remain there for the moment. Now, there's no right or wrong about where they should be. They don't need to be down onto the ground. Focus is on the breath. Shoulders relaxed and away from the ears. And then on the next in-breath, coming back through the centre. And rolling the knees through and in the other direction. Focus back to the breath again, settling the knees to the other side. And then back to the centre on the in-breath. Breathe out as you move your thighs to belly, knees to chest. You can have a little rock from side to side again across your lower back if you'd like to. And then when you're ready, I would suggest rolling over onto your side and taking a moment before you push yourself up to seated. Okay, so well done. I really hope you enjoyed your practice today, and I hope to see you again. Namaste.